All right. Apologize for a slightly late start. A little bit of technical difficulties getting going this afternoon. My name is Dennis Misigoy, Libertarian, running for the U.S. Senate here in the state of Florida. Back with the weekly live stream. Back with the Thursday afternoon live stream. So, couple big stories. I guess only one of them I really would like to talk about, but two of the big topics in I think at the national level in particular that have come up in the last week or so. One of those being, I think, the sort of low-hanging fruit for a libertarian like myself to really just bang the drum on is this what is it called now? I'm trying to remember the name of the board, but from the Department of Homeland Security, the board that they put together for disinformation, head up by, her name's escaping me now. Let me see. I know I've got it around here. Is it? I'm trying to think. Is her first name Nina Jankowicz? Yeah, Nina Jankowicz. This insanity of having a government board to oversee and try to stop and call out misinformation and disinformation. It's sort of beyond the pale in terms of things that are just outright absurd, because there simply is no bigger purveyor of misinformation and disinformation than the government. And uniquely, and I would say even uniquely so, because government, unlike a lot of other entities which may at times have an incentive, whether it's like an individual person who may lie about something or a business that may, for example, like tobacco companies lying about the effects of their products. Typically, at the end of the day, there is some culpability, there is some accountability through one method or another. That's pretty much never the case, it seems like, with government. Lies are told and repeated and spread, and there just really is no stopping it. And unfortunately, and so often, it's those of us who, or anybody who really does a little more research, digs a little deeper, and tries to tell the truth, or at least offer a counter narrative to what is the official narrative, who then get labeled either as kooks or other sorts of things, conspiracy theorists, I think, for some. I try to avoid sort of things that might even sound that way myself, because I think just sticking to stuff that we already know, stuff that's already been revealed, is typically damning enough for the government. But yes, that is it. Declassified, admit something 60 years later. You're lucky if you find out about something like that. And even then, some of the things that we have learned about through those kind of ways are really appalling, and it calls to mind exactly how terrible the tendencies of some of these people are. But you don't have to go look that far back, really, because some of this stuff, thankfully, in the age of information, where this stuff is so easily, information, let me say, is so easily transferred. You don't need to get a primetime spot on the primetime news to be able to get a message out there anymore. Today it's a lot easier, and that's one of the things I'm thankful for that makes me hopeful for the future, is the fact that it is that hard to clamp down on information in modern times. But you look at what's gone on even in the last 2 decades or so, with the justifications given for U.S. involvement in several different wars and so many of these things which turned out to not really be true. Secretaries of state getting up in front of the UN Security Council to present the evidence. Remember Colin Powell back, I believe it was in 2002 or 2003, prior to the U.S. going in to Iraq, to make the case that they were developing weapons of mass destruction and these mobile labs and all this crazy stuff. It was wild and dishonest, and these guys knew, all of them knew up the chain of command, that they were searching for the evidence. They were searching for anything they could pass off as the evidence, and doing it to try to create a predetermined outcome of what they wanted to happen to public opinion. And And that is really the sort of thing. We've seen some of that in different capacity over the last couple of years with, obviously, with COVID. Now, it's interesting, and a story I haven't looked into much, actually, I guess this is another big one, would be a number of documents coming out from Pfizer. I believe, again, I take this with a grain of salt a little bit just because it's not something I've done a ton of research on in this particular case. But stuff revealing recognition earlier on that the efficacy of the vaccine from early on only, I think, made about I for some reason I'm thinking of a number around 12% in terms of increasing the ability to combat the disease. I forget exactly how it was measured, but it was something, the sort of 95% effectiveness or 100% or whatever was initially sold, and this is something very different. And it is. It goes back to, and there's other people out there who have these compilations. I need to go find and download some of these videos that people have put together that have these nice compilations where you see folks like Dr. Fauci and her name escapes me, but the Walensky, the CDC director, all making public statements on the record, on camera, on the news, going out and saying, "Oh, if you get the vaccine, you won't get it." Very repeated stuff, and whatever you may want to think about some aspects of this, the fact of the matter is they didn't say, well, we think this is going to be, or this is consistent with what we've seen so far, or anything along those lines. What they said pretty explicitly from the get-go in a lot of these cases was, well, you do this, and it's going to work, and this is going to work, and it was presented in a way with absolute certainty, which was disinformation. It was lies. I don't even want to put a fancy word on it or add so many syllables. It's just lies. And government lies and gets away with it. And even whatever you think about the use of masks, the whole thing that went on with the bait and switch back and forth at the beginning about, well, we want to save it for the first responders and everything. Even if you think it's a noble lie, it's a lie. And again, this is, and in particular, I think also the person they're putting in charge of this, I don't know what she's coming from in terms of a prior position, but Ms. Jankowicz also was one of the folks who was back during the 2020 election cycle decrying the story of the Hunter Biden laptop, which turned out to be true, but she was spreading misinformation, saying that it was, a hoax and Russian propaganda or whatnot. And so it really says something to you, and anybody should be kind of obviously recognize this, that you don't want to have, and really the government never should have any perceived monopoly on the truth. Government is defined by its power, by its capacity for violent force, so it attracts people who want that power. It attracts people who want to have that power and use it, and those people typically are a little bit less committed to the truth. And it was interesting because I don't keep up with all these sort of peculiar holidays and, international this, that, and the other day, but I believe one of the ones in the last week or so was the World Free Press Day or something along those lines. And to have that, and anyone sort of commemorating that, I got a chuckle out of Congresswoman Demings making a post about that, where and at the same time being kind of silent about the idea of having a government disinformation, misinformation board, really a disinformation governance board, that's what it's called, under the Department of Homeland Security, a department which shouldn't even exist. So again, rather than expanding this department to now police speech and thought and the information people are sharing, we should really just be getting rid of this relic of the war of terror, of the war on terror. I need to be a little clear that this really hasn't been a war about going after terrorism, and certainly not about clamping down on terrorism. This is about control, and this is just another means by which we're doing that now on people that we would never have considered this sort of thing, and certainly being able to spread information, present alternative viewpoints, contradictory viewpoints to the official narrative should be something that we applaud, that we are always supporting, and really there should always be a place for in our society. There should never need to be a debate about it. So Um, so it's wild that this is something that's going on today in 2022. I guess it makes a little more sense than from back in the olden times when I guess people still had a recognition or a better recognition about the importance of this. But it is, I guess I say it's shocking in a sense, but on another level, it is sort of just par for the course. Because every time these folks expand government, particularly within the two-party system, they're the ones who have all the power at this point. But they do this, even though they have this perceived polarized, hyper-polarized partisanship, this big conflict between the two sides. But each one of them supports this stuff, seeming to never ever think that it would ever be possible that the other side will regain power and use this stuff in a way that might adversely affect them, which is the most strangest thing. And maybe that's actually true, because for the folks in power, they really don't tend to have to worry all that much. For all that's ever been thrown in terms of negativity within the partisan debate over what anyone in the past has done, and I remember less than a decade and a half ago when Bush was finishing his second term, there were a lot of cries for people to go after him and, war criminal. And I think a lot of that being very, very justified, obviously, given the record. But it's remarkable that from there, not only did nothing happen, but the way that his image has been sort of now embraced by so many of the people who, would have liked to see him burned at the stake back in 2008, it is quite remarkable. And by the same token, I won't say that necessarily their images have been rehabilitated in the eyes of those folks, but it was an interesting conversation I was just having earlier today, a little back and forth, where we were discussing some of the empty platitudes of the last Republican administration coming in, such as America First, drain the swamp, and of course lock her up, which of course you could go find the video of Trump at a rally soon thereafter saying, oh yeah, that was great before the election, but now we don't care. And that really is somewhat indicative of maybe not necessarily everything that they might say in terms of policy, but certainly when they talk about holding others accountable, even holding the people that they present as the absolute worst of the worst, when they talk about holding them accountable, if they're in government, they're not really that serious. The only people they want to hold accountable is you, and not even hold you accountable for something you did, but hold you accountable for something else, and put the burden on you. It is incredible when you think about, and this crosses a wide range of issues, wide range of topics. Lost the thought a little bit there in my head for a second there, but when we're talking about, for example, like climate change, and this is one of these things, no matter what you may think about it, no matter what you may think about that as an issue and the urgency of the matter, I just find it incredible that, when you think about one of the biggest polluters, or probably the single largest polluting entity that exists, is the U.S. military. If it were a country unto itself, it would be among the top 50 polluting countries in the world, all by itself. It pollutes more than, I forget, is it 140 or 190 other countries? Individually, not together. But again, you play policeman of the world and you need to patrol that a very large beat. It takes a lot of fuel. And in addition, a lot of the other top, for as much as people want to blame it on private industry, when you look at the biggest polluters in terms of companies, a lot of them, if not the majority, are state-owned oil companies. So there's no, and yet what we're told is that it's us who need to make the sacrifice. It's us who need to cut back. Us, the regular people whose carbon footprint is like this, each one of us individually, rather than these large organizations. Certainly less than, Biden when he was traveling to one of these climate summits and had an 85-car motorcade. And I can guarantee you they weren't 85 electric cars. And even if they were, you still have to wonder where the electricity comes from, because you can still be burning stuff for the electricity that goes into an electric vehicle. Not to mention all the other stuff that you guys can do research on. Other people know better than me in terms of the what is the cost to, and I mean don't mean cost financial in terms of money, but the cost of producing the batteries that are used in a lot of these things for some of the rare minerals that are required for it. Where there's still quite a bit of damage that's done to do that. So yeah, no, it is something. Certainly promises to do things like pay off the debt or even reduce the debt. Get anywhere close to it. We haven't even been anywhere in that stratosphere in the last 20 years. And even when there was the government running a little bit of a budget surplus back in the late 90s, I think a lot of that is more driven just by economic upturn at the time, where we really hadn't quite taken off in the same level of government expansion and the expansion of government spending, which unsurprisingly happened at a time when we had a Republican president and Republican majorities in both houses of Congress. So once they had all that, then they could, and it wasn't just the wars. I know the wars are a great excuse for it, and certainly we don't want to give a pass to the military-industrial complex, but also stuff like No Child Left Behind, expanding the Department of Education, or Medicare Part D. The Republicans were never shy, certainly not in that era, about expanding government. We got the CARES Act while we still had, I think Republican majority in the Senate, and of course we had the Republican in the White House at the time. And that's not to say that I could never be amenable to any of the emergency spending to at least help people out in a situation like that, but you gotta find the money somewhere. You can't just be printing it out of thin air. You certainly can't allow the Fed to do more and more of that. That's something else that needs to stop, and that's another story. We're gonna see how that plays out. I'll never claim to have the greatest expertise and to be able to give you an exact timetable, but keep an eye on what's going on with the Fed raising rates. I believe that should, as they're kind of forced to do that to tackle inflation, it's going to lead to other things down the road. So, buckle up and make sure that you have what you need. Like I said, there's people who can give you a little bit better advice, but there is going to be something happening. Along those same lines, let me see. But yeah, the idea of a government-run disinformation board, disinformation governance board, is the height of absurdity, because they are the number one purveyors of disinformation, used to elicit specific responses from the public politically, or if nothing else, to simply keep us off the scent of whatever it is they're actually doing. Trying to think other good examples that I wanted to throw out there, but I think most of that is pretty well known. So I was going to mention the 2019, what was released in 2019, the Afghanistan papers, which revealed a lot of the false information, or just how the general progress of the war was misrepresented to the American people for a very, very long time across Republican and Democratic administrations, where we saw, again, people who, most Americans who remained supporting those wars, did it with the false understanding that things were going in a positive way, that there was actual progress being made, something that was, if not well enough revealed when the Afghanistan papers themselves came out, certainly was very much revealed when the Americans, the U.S. left Afghanistan, and I say specifically the U.S. forces left Afghanistan, and the Taliban took over the rest of the country within a week. So that's a real good indicator. But for many, many years, we were lied to and told about the good progress and the government we were building there, and so it's we could repeat this and talk about it ad nauseum. There's countless examples, but it's something you can't say enough of, I suppose, because and this is something, and we're going to see how it manifests and what they actually try to do with it. But it's certainly something where it would just be another reason why I would be love to, if given the opportunity, to sponsor legislation to abolish the Department of Homeland Security. And at the bare minimum, if I wouldn't be able to do that directly by sponsoring and passing new legislation, certainly to be able to put together a block of votes within the U.S. Senate to be able to stop funding these kind of departments that fund these kind of programs and that do this sort of engage in this sort of activity. There's no room for it. It's inconsistent with our values. Obviously, most obviously, is free speech, but also our ability to have information, to be able to have an open political process. You can't have that where certain views and ideas and information is ruled by government authorities to be unacceptable for folks to hear, and that's something that we just cannot tolerate. So I'll take a little bit of the last bit of time I'm going to be on, and I'll touch on the other big story that I think, if we're talking about a story that's maybe intended to distract people, I don't know, but it's obviously what's going on with the leaked leaked opinion draft with the Supreme Court regarding possibly overturning Roe v. Wade. I tend to really dislike discussing abortion as an issue for a lot of different reasons, but I think the debate is so dominated by folks who are on the extremes of the subject. Typically, I mean, I think probably where I fall in is still where a lot of, and the majority of Americans probably do, which is recognizing that human life begins quite a bit before birth, but it doesn't begin at conception, that there is, some time in between, and certainly not thinking that anyone should be forced to carry a child after rape or some of these other sort of circumstances. However, the debate gets so mucked up, and it is dominated by the extremes, but it's a polarizing issue. And I think there's a lot of misrepresentation from the folks on those extremes about what the others also believe. Even if you so vehemently disagree with either side, I think it's really terrible to sort of misrepresent them. Because if I think you're wrong, I don't need to make up stories about and make up other things that you believe. If I think you're wrong, let me just engage what it is you actually think. And I wish that happened at least a little bit more in this debate. But I find that this is one where it's really uniquely bad. Not to say that is something that doesn't happen on other issues, but it happens here in a way that I think is just worse than the norm. So just one of those things where and even the lingo, the verbiage that is used to define the two sides, where one calls himself pro-life and the other calls himself pro-choice. We're not talking about life, and we're not talking about choice. That's made pretty obvious, particularly when you look at the people in the mainstream who support these positions, and some of the other positions they might support. You can't be pro-life and support, say, pro-abortion, at least pro-legalized abortion, access to abortion, or something along those lines. It may be a little long-winded, but it's certainly a lot more honest than calling themselves pro-life and pro-choice. And it tends to lead to a lot of unproductive arguing, in my humble opinion. So, some of my 2 cents on that. I will, just because I had an overabundance, but I do want to chime in, and at least before I wrap up, as the question was asked, and as is usually asked, how can we help? The URL is here, Misigoy.com. You can go there, or you can go to Misigoy.com/donate, or you can hit the button up on top. You can contribute there. That makes a big difference. If you want to volunteer, there's a form on there you can fill out as well. I can get you on with other folks. I'm working on getting the team a little bit better organized to do a few more things. But we got to raise money. We got to. I don't expect to raise the same what we've got the other guys. Obviously, we have to struggle with a lot more challenges as a third party. We don't have the same infrastructure, but we don't need the same. But we do need some. So anyone who can contribute there. I'm going to be down in Miami next week on the 10th. So anybody who's down there in South Florida, I'd love to see you. Come on out, join me. Let me see what else is going on. That's the big stuff. Well, I don't know if we got anything else. Maybe I'll cut this one a little bit early. I say a little early. I got started a little late, so technically I'm past the time. But great talking to you guys. Thank you for logging in, for joining me, and really appreciate it. And I will be back on with you guys next week. And right, stay safe until then. And if you guys can, like I said, come on over to the website, support it. I'll have this, the video, probably the YouTube version of this, connected on the front page. And also follow on social media anywhere. Whether you're following this right now on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, make sure you're following the Twitter page. And we got Instagram as well. We're going to get a little bit better on that one in terms of getting some more content out. But it's all a work in progress. We need your help. So please, if you agree that we need to have the different opinion, the different views, and the different principles, the principles of individual liberty represented here, we can't wait until November. You can't wait until November, because if you wait until November, I ain't going to be there. So I need you guys' support as soon as we can. All right. Thank you guys again, and I will talk to you next week.